back with more Expect the Unexpected by Arctic Vulpix. In the last chapter, we had Mangle take her revenge on the puppet with a bit of help from Ruby at the end. So, yeah. But we're on to the next chapter. If you want to follow along, the chapter link to it will be in the description below, as always. So let's get started. Chapter 38. Communication. Things at the pizzeria settled into a strange routine after everything died down. The toys of the originals still held glaring matches during the day with each other, Toby's and Bunny's rivalry being the worst, followed closely by Toy Chica and Chica. Freddy and Toy Freddy seemed to pretty much ignore each other. The originals were mostly polite and careful around Mangle. They still avoided Heidi like the plague, while the toys still glared daggers at Ruby whenever she was there, day or night. The toys were also dismayed to find out that Ruby's pranks continued even without the bet. It was just her hobby at the moment to drive everyone crazy. As for the puppet, they mostly stayed away from him. The originals were disgusted by him, while the toys were unsure and awkward. Mangle and Heidi were still mad, and Ruby, well, it was still a tack on sight for her. Their nightly routine had settled as well. The two groups stayed separate, while Puppet sulked in his box until one of the toys set off Ruby's traps, which sparked a chase. She then quickly turned the chase around with one of her weapons, and they ended up with headaches at the end of the night. Even though Ruby didn't like the toys with their superior attitudes, it did bother her that the groups didn't interact except to fight. She accepted the fact that they were the way they were because of Puppet, and she couldn't exactly blame them for it. No matter how much she wanted to bash Toby over the head with Betty, which was a lot. A lot. So when she overheard a conversation between them and Heidi, it got her thinking of a way to start fixing things. First step was to get the notion that she was a one-note night guard out of their heads. Seriously, honestly, she wasn't even trying to prank them anymore. They literally just walked right into the ones usually intended for the staff like idiots. Wait, you mean Mangle knows where BB is? Toy Freddy asked in surprise. Yeah. She saw him when she was Hold on, let me do this properly. Yeah. She saw him when she was hunting the other night, Edie told him. Then where is he? That's the problem. She can't explain him fighting with her hands damaged like that, and in her state, it's too dangerous for her to show us. Ruby could hear the frown in Heidi's voice. I see. Well, it's not a priority at the moment, but the staff have noticed that he's missing. Heidi sighed. Only now? More of a reluctant acceptance that he's missing instead of ignoring it as a blessing, actually. Toy Freddy deadpan. Ruby snickered at the memory again before growing thoughtful once more. She could always tell them where she hid the annoying bowling ball, but that would be boring and wouldn't help accomplish anything. Luckily, she had a different plan. That night, she distracted the box with another Disney movie before sneaking off. Peeking into the toys room showed Heidi trying to break up an argument between the Barbie chicken and rabbit with Toy Freddy's help. Mangle didn't seem to be in the room, which benefited her. Searching through the rooms quickly, she found the battered fox sitting alone in Pirate's Cove, staring at her hands. Heidi had been making progress, but it was clear that she had a long way to go. Mangle now had one head again, and parts of her endoskeleton had been covered up once more, but other parts were still showing, and her hands didn't have the dexterity they needed for something like writing, especially the long explanation that it would take to explain where BB was. She knocked on the door frame to alert the jumping bot to her presence. Mangle's head snapped up to look at her, and she cowered a little. Ruby raised her hand in a peaceful gesture. Just want to talk, she grinned. The fox was still tense, but looked down at her hands and nodded. She had shown less fear around Ruby since she had punished the kids that hurt her, but there was still some lingering around. Ruby strolled in and plopped down on the floor near where she was sitting. I was eavesdropping on on a conversation and heard that you found where I hid your annoying friend, she asked with a grin. Mangle looked up, worried that Ruby would be upset about this. About time someone found him. I mean, geez. I didn't think that no one would find him, the night guard sighed dramatically. Anyway, she leaned in closer, eyes sparkling. Did you like the hiding place? She asked mischievously. Mangle looked surprised and stared at her for a moment before looking down and nodding shyly. Ruby snickered. I worked hard on that idea. Mangle waited, wondering what Ruby had come here for, alone as well. She didn't think that the teenager would feel that at ease around her after everything that happened. Her eyes flickered to Ruby's shoulder that she still clearly favored somewhat. Anyway, you're trying to figure out a way to tell the Barbies where he is, aren't you? She asked. Mangle glanced up again worriedly, but Ruby didn't look angry about it. She nodded after a moment, her hands fidgeting again. Well, it goes against my principles to just tell them myself, Ruby smirked. But I can help you get the message across if you want. Now Mangle looked up properly, surprised. Ruby seemed genuine enough in her offer, though. But she'd already tried all the methods. The fox's ears drooped, and she reached over to pick up the marker that was on the floor next to her. Her fingers couldn't quite grip around it, and it clattered to the floor. She gave a forlorn, staticky sound, looking down again. She didn't know why Ruby wanted to help, although she did appreciate it, but there wasn't anything that she could do. To her surprise, Ruby gave it a amused chuckle. What people forget is that speaking and writing aren't the only forms of communication, she told Mangle, her voice softening slightly. Mangle looked up again, and cocked her head, curious to her meaning. Watch, Ruby told her. Her hands blurred through some odd signs, and she grinned at the robot. Just said, Hi, how are you there? Mangle looked bewildered. It's sign language, all done through arm and hand gestures. While your speed and some gestures might be affected, I think you've got enough dexterity to communicate enough to people, Ruby explained. Now the fox looked interested. She leaned forward slightly, ears pricking up. I learned it so I could communicate with this one kid I knew, she explained further, sharing the same signs at a slow pace. Do you want me to teach you? Mangle answered by lifting her hands to try and mimic Ruby. Ruby smiled slightly, caught that one of the toys was willing to listen to her. We'll start with the basics, okay? She suggested. Mangle nodded shyly. The lesson went well. Mangle did struggle with some signs, as she was slow, but she learned quickly, and Ruby was a surprisingly patient teacher. Near the end of the night, and the only time either group thought to look for the two, Mangle could read quite a lot of what Ruby said and respond in kind. Must be nice to have a robot brain, Ruby complained at some point out loud. Would make studying a breeze. Mangle stared at her hand with a slight frown. She didn't feel like she was making much progress. You learn a lot, Ruby assured her, staring at the ceiling. It takes people a long time to learn. And you've got the basics down already. She gave the fox a lopsided grin. Mangle looked at her for a moment before she lifted her hands and clumsily signed, Thank you. Ruby's grin widened. No problem. Mangle gave a small smile as a return. She was surprised by how approachable the night guard had turned out to be. When she wasn't hyper adrenaline or angry, she was actually very nice. Before she could say anything else, though, there was a sudden commotion in the hall. Frowning, Ruby stood up and poked her head out. She immediately reeled back as she was assaulted by a wall of noise. Seeing the originals were blaming the toys for Ruby's disappearance, while the toys were claiming that Ruby had to have done something to Mangle. They didn't even notice her fuming in the doorway. I'm gonna go teach a lesson about assumptions now. Ruby smiled dangerously at Mangle as she picked up her bat. This arguing is getting on my nerves. Mangle gulped as the yelling turned to screams and yelps. Yes, Ruby could be very nice. She was also still pretty darn terrifying and probably the best fit for this job now that she thought about it. She smiled slightly, looking down at her hands. Suddenly, the night guard didn't seem so intimidating anymore. Aw, that's a little sweet. But yeah, we had a little chapter Mangle now learning sign language. So, this is also a short chapter, but I hope you did enjoy it. It's pretty sweet. I love Ruby so much and the relationship she kind of has with Mangle. But yeah, it was very sweet, and yeah. If you like this video, leave a like. Go leave a review. You don't need an account. It just means the author can't respond. So go. This is the end of the video. So go leave a review. We're done here now. And yeah, be sure to subscribe. Upload new videos Fridays and Saturdays now. Anyway, see you tomorrow with a new video. Bye!